What's going on, y'all? Hope everybody's doing good. But today I'm going to be talking about some of the best baits to be throwing during springtime. These are going to be some of the baits that I personally love to throw during this time of year when wintertime's just now ending and spring is starting. So some of those water temps may still be a little bit cold, but they're warming up. The bass are pulling out from the deep water and moving up shallow to feed up and get fat for some of the spawning that they're about to do. And I will make a different video specifically for when bass spawn, but you got to think a lot of these baits I'm about to talk are going to be kind of the same and are going to work all through the springtime. And another thing is not all people are going to have bass spawning during the springtime. For example, if you live down in Florida where it's a little bit warmer, those bass are going to spawn earlier. If you live way up north, those bass are going to spawn a little bit later in the year. So it's different for everybody. It should be noted I live in Georgia, so I'm kind of in between. But a lot of these baits are going to work for those springtime patterns anywhere. When those water temps start to warm up and you notice the bass starting to move up shallow, that's where these baits are going to succeed and you're going to catch some fish if you throw them. And to start out with, I got some baits that are moving baits for those guys that like to just cast and reel, power fish, and cover water. And then I got some slow moving baits, but it should be noted, both of these baits are going to be things I have tied on because it's good to change it up. It's good to change pace. It's going to change up what those bass are looking at because you never know what they're going to eat. You could have some bass one day that just want to see a moving bait, something just burning past their face, and then some days they want something slow. So that being noted, to get straight into it, I'm just gonna say a chatterbait. It's a bait that you can cast and reel, you can cover a lot of water, but a chatterbait, I'm gonna be mainly throwing, this is probably actually my main color for the lakes I'm fishing. I got a grass line, I got grass that meets some hard cover like rock that those fish were sitting on in wintertime. So when they come up to push those bluegill up against that grass line where those rocks that they were sitting on in the wintertime, they're gonna be right there where those rocks and grass meet. And I think that's going to be a perfect place to be throwing chatterbaits. I'm mainly going to be trying to throw bluegill style colors. If you're in a smaller body of water and you got mainly some little minnows, some bait fish, maybe some shad, a shad color may be beneficial, kind of match the hatch. But me personally, I'm going to be throwing bluegill sunfish colors such as this red and orange. Black and blue is another good one. If you're fishing very stained water, maybe something very bright like a chartreuse may work. But just a chatterbait's going to be a fantastic bait to start off with in this early springtime. Now moving on, if you've seen some of my past videos, everybody knows I like throwing a square bill. And don't get me wrong, a square bill is going to be one of the best baits to throw year round, but especially during the springtime. Now, when those water temps are going to be a little bit colder, I'm going to be throwing a flat side square bill. It's just going to have a different wobble that those bass are going to like when it's colder. It's going to be a little bit more, I guess you could say, finesse, along with the rattle. This one specifically, it's a Guggen Squad. I forgot the name, so just don't quote me on the name. I just know it's a Guggen Squad flat side square bill. But it does the job. It's got a kind of louder rattle, so when I'm reeling this, I can pause it. That rattle is going to sit there and rattle. It's going to get the attention. It's going to get reaction strikes, but I can also just burn this bait, cover water, and get those bass to eat. But the first bait I talked about was that chatterbait, and then I talked about a square bill. So kind of meeting in the middle, what I love throwing during the springtime is going to be a jabberjaw. For those that don't know, it's a square bill, but the bill is made of metal and it goes back and forth, just like a chatterbait, but in a square bill body. So it's got a little bit of both. It's like the best of both worlds. It's something I'm gonna be throwing down the side of grass, over the top of grass if I can, by hard cover like wood or rock. Anything those bass may be tucked up against and I can get this bait to, I'm gonna throw it. It's gonna be a fantastic bait. It's gonna imitate those bluegill. It has erratic movement, so you can pause it, get reaction strikes, you can burn it, you can just sit it and pause, kind of slow fish this bait. But a jabberjaw is going to be one of my best baits and favorite baits to be throwing during the springtime of year. It's also just a fun bait to be throwing because how different it is, because it combines a chatterbait and a square bill. Now moving on from those three, I got a bait I kind of throw year round, and that's going to be the Buka baby bullgill. Usually I throw the baby bull shad, but during the springtime I want a little bit bigger profile. I want the bluegill profile, and that's where I will throw the Buka baby bull gill, because it's just going to be so natural. You can throw it up shallow against the grass that those bass may be pulling up into, because they were so used to sitting out deep. They're going to come out and sit in the grass, look for those bluegill that are hiding in the grass. And that's where something so natural, matching the hatch, will work and catch those bass. It's just something you can cover a lot of water with and catch a lot of fish. Now, speaking of covering water, a lipless crankbait is going to be another fantastic alternative. A lipless crankbait now is going to be a little bit more effective for those lakes that have those harder bottoms, such as almost all rock and very little grass. Not that you can't fish this in grass, because if you have grass, go it down that grass line, go over the top of the grass if you can. But a lipless crankbait, you can just cover all the water. You can search for those bass. It's going to be fantastic. You can let this bait hit the bottom, work it slow, just pick up that rod and then reel it down, almost like you're fishing a Texas rig, for example. But this bait will get bit because you can cover so much water, make so many more casts. But what I personally like a lipless crankbait for in that earlier time spring is not all of those bass have pulled up, because if those water temps are still a little bit cold, you're going to have some bass out deep still, you're going to have some bass up shallow. So I'm going to be throwing this bait a little bit deeper than I am, say, a chatterbait or even a jabberjaw or a square bill this time of year. So I can get those bass that are still kind of hanging out deep and not knowing to move up shallow or not. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, because say you got two rods you're going to bring with you. One you can tie on a chatterbait, one you can tie on a lipless crankbait. So you got those fish that want to feed up and get fat for that spawn later that spring, but you can get those fish that are out deep thinking it's maybe still a little bit winter time, and then you can get those fish that have already pushed up and are looking to feed. Now, another bait that I love to throw, and this is going to be the last moving bait I talk about before I go into the slow moving baits, but it's going to be a jerk bait. A lot of people were hopefully throwing a jerk bait over winter because it's a fantastic bait to be thrown during the winter time of months. But right at the beginning of spring and end of winter, when you're getting into springtime, those bass, some of them are going to be absolutely aggressive and looking for bait fish to feed up on, but then some are going to be a little bit lethargic. They're still going to be a little bit cold and they're not going to be ready to feed. But that's why a jerkbait's so good during the springtime. It's because when those fish are hungry, they're chasing bait, being aggressive, you can work this jerkbait fast. You can jerk it fast. You don't have to put any pauses in it. You can just keep moving that bait, having it move very erratically, getting reaction strikes and getting those hungry bass to eat. But another thing is those lethargic bass, when you work this bait, you can just pause it and hover it. Because even if they're not hungry, bass are a little bit territorial. So when a bait's just sitting right where they want to be, they're going to bite that bait because they want the bait to be somewhere else. And when they do that, they're still going to get those hooks in their mouth. And that's what makes a jerkbait so good, because you can get those hungry bass and those bass that may not be the hungriest. Okay, now moving on, that was all kind of my moving baits. I'm going to move on to my slow moving baits. I got 4 things here I'm going to talk about. And to start off with, you can't go wrong with just a Senko during the springtime. There's so many ways to rig a Senko: wacky rig, Nico rig, Texas rig, you name it, it's going to catch fish. Something you can just tie on, throw around hard cover that those fish may be tucked up behind, ready to ambush some bait that goes by, anything that's up in the grass. Just, you can throw a Senko anywhere in any style you want. Me personally, I'm going to be mainly throwing a Senko on a wacky rig because I have the most confidence in that. And when it comes to Senko fishing during the springtime, the main key is that confidence. If you don't have a confidence in the Nico rig, don't throw the Nico rig. Maybe throw a Texas rigged Senko. But a Senko is going to be a bait that's always going to get bit. I'm a big advocate for the black and blue flake, the black and purple flake like I got here. But like I said earlier when I was talking about the moving baits, I really target some of those bluegill colors. So if you want to throw a green pumpkin blue, watermelon, those are also fantastic colors. But a Senko you cannot get wrong with. Now moving on, we talked about rigging the Senko Texas rig because that is one of the many options. But when I'm just throwing a standard Texas rig during springtime, I like to throw a little creature bait. I don't want to throw a big worm like I am later in the summer, but I want to throw just something kind of subtle, but it's a little bit aggressive. And that's where I think the Guggen Squad Bandito bug is absolutely perfect. I will rig this up on a 4-aught EWG hook with a little Texas rig weight and just go down the bank and I will catch fish. Say if I come across a dock, I can flip those dock pylons and catch some bass. Because just something so subtle but so aggressive, those bass are going to eat. It's not going to be too big to spook them away. It's going to be just right. And it's going to be an easy meal that they think of, but before you know it, they got a hook in their mouth and they don't know what hit them. Now moving on, another thing is, if people have watched me in the past, you know I'm a very big shaky head guy. And that's where a worm comes in. I just said on a Texas rig, I want to be throwing a little creature bait, such as a bandito bug. But when it comes to a shaky head, I want to be throwing just a very simple worm. The bluegill colors, that's really where I'm going to target on a shaky head. My favorite color is going to be Green Pumpkin Magic from Zoom and the trick worm. That's going to be my all-time go-to when I'm throwing a shaky head. I don't know why, but that bluegill color of the Green Pumpkin Magic on a shaky head just gets bit. Everywhere I throw it, it's getting bit. Really, no matter the time of year, shaky head is something I'm throwing all times of year. But when those bass pull up shallow to feed up on those bluegill, throwing that shaky head along those banks against any cover you can, it's going to get bit. Okay, moving on. This is going to be my last bait. When I talked about the jerk bait, I talked about some bass are going to still be a little bit lethargic like they were in the wintertime. So my finesse bait, other than the Senko, is going to be a Ned rig. My favorite Ned rig is this right here. This is the Guggen Squad Rattling Ned. And I'm not the biggest Guggen Squad guy, but some of their baits are absolutely perfect for what they do. And that's where Rattling Ned's perfect, because it's got that rattle in it. So when those bass are being a little bit lethargic and they want something small and subtle, if that bait's on the bottom with an exposed jig head, you can just kind of lightly tap that, and bait's gonna sit there and rattle. It's gonna get those fish's attention, and eventually, if you do that enough, it's almost like those bass will be annoyed with that rattle, that they will bite it to try to make it be quiet, and then when they bite that, you're gonna get that hook in them, and you're gonna catch yourself a nice bass. So that's pretty much it. Finesse-wise, you definitely got some options, but when I'm springtime fishing, I'm mainly just power fishing. But saying that, when you finesse fish with something, say a Senko or even the Ned rig, you can still almost power fish. You can make a lot of casts. Even if you don't have live scope, you can just cast it out, let it sink down to the bottom, and then reel it back. Just keep doing that. The more casts you make during springtime, the more fish you're going to catch, because a lot of those fish are going to be feeding up, getting ready to spawn later that spring. But just be aggressive when you fish. Don't be scared to make casts. And that's going to be the biggest thing for the springtime. It's just going to be keep making those casts. Cast along any sorts of cover. If you see bait, don't be scared to go along the bait. But that's pretty much it. I hope this video helped. Hopefully y'all can go catch some nice springtime bass. And like I said, I'll make a video speaking about some of the better baits for that time of year that those bass are spawning, which could be kind of any time of year, because like I said earlier in the video, those guys up north where it's cold, it's going to be later in the year. Down south, it's going to be a little bit earlier in the year. So look forward to that video. But these baits are going to be something that you can throw during that spawn, a good part into summer as well. But they're just very solid baits you can't go wrong with in early spring, when those waters are just now starting to warm up and those bass are getting pulled up. So hopefully this video helped. If it did, please hit that thumbs up. and hit that subscribe button for more. If you got any questions, please leave down in the comments, and I will try my best to get back and answer y'all. But thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch y'all next time.